Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I am broadcasting this on Friday, and on Fridays I'd like to stay a little more lighthearted. And I will have a second video for you, which is very practical with some specific tips of taming the tyrants in your own life. But I couldn't let this week end without sharing an email that came in from another healthy American in the UK. And I'm going to keep the name anonymous, but I wanted to find out if you knew about the military doing spraying and testing of chemicals on the population. And this was back in the 1960s. So I want to share this email with you. And I find it so interesting to hear about the spraying in the skies. It's not just in California. It's not just in New Mexico. And apparently it's not just in Florida or Tennessee or the other places like Montana, where we would never expect this to be happening. So I want to reveal this to you in just a moment. And I want to thank all of you that are sending me your personal stories, your emails, your photos. There are so many stories that I want to share with you in the coming days, and I will. There's a lot of news to catch up on, but what I really love to share are the personal stories and your emails. So let me do that as soon as I share a message from the sponsor. And you know my friends over at noblegoldinvestments.com. I want to share my screen here and we'll go right on over. And if you feel called to learn about this, why don't you give them a call at 877-646-5347? Because if you've looked at the banks lately, it seems fine on the surface, but there's a whole lot more going on underneath. It's kind of like looking under the hood of a car, and then you find a mess of broken wires and parts. The parts, basically, we can say are the loans for homes, cars, and those credit cards that a lot of people use. Those are all hitting record highs. And it is kind of scary when you think about it, because why would you want to risk your money for like a 5% return when things are so shaky? And that's where Noble Gold Investments can help. Think of them as a friend that knows all about how to keep your money safe. They do suggest precious metals, gold and silver. These are oldies but goodies in the financial world. And they've got a sweet deal here. I want to share this with you. And this is a 1/4 ounce gold standard coin that they are offering this month if you qualify. It is free. How awesome is that? I think that is pretty darn cool. So if you're curious, just give them a call. It is 877-646-5347. You can also go online and get this free guide to find out if your money is properly protected. Just, have a phone call. It's just a chat. There's no pressure. You'll talk to somebody in the United States. They'll help you figure out if gold and silver are right for you. So there you have it. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Take the first step toward your safer financial future. The disclaimer, of course, is there's no guarantee and all investments carry a risk, but find out if this is a good fit for you. Friends, we have been talking about the spraying in the skies, and even our United States military has admitted to spraying what they call chaff, which is these aluminum coated particles. That does not sound very good. And it seems like years go by and then the government apologizes for things that they've done to we, the people. And it's not just in the United States. I want to share this information with you here, and we are going to go right on over to this news article from the BBC. Let me share my screen, and then I want to share with you a personal email from a healthy American. So here we have it. And this is some years old, but that's okay because it also does apply to what's going on in our skies in terms of the government admitting to spraying things. Look at this. Inquiry into spray cancer claims. The effects of cadmium spraying over a city in the 1960s are to be investigated after claims that it was linked with cancer of the esophagus. And I will share with you, but first let me share with you an email from a healthy American. And I'm so grateful to have this email correspondence. She says, "Hello, Peggy. I hope that you are well and safe from the attacks in California." And we know what those are all about. Just look up in the sky and look at the weather warfare. She said, "I knew about this weapons testing in the UK many years ago, as there was a whole family that was wiped out with throat cancer in Norwich." I think that's the pronunciation. There was only the mom left at the time. And she said, "I was looking into it, and it turns out that she also had throat cancer." The Department of Defense in the UK admitted to spraying this area repeatedly. They didn't just spray from the air, they also sprayed from trucks along the roads. And there are photos of them doing this. She says, at that time, when I looked into the laws surrounding this, the Department of Defense, Ministry of Defense, it's called there, they were protected by a law that said they could test on the people as long as it was for the greater good. You know how I feel about that in case of a biological attack. She said, this reminds me of the similar get out of jail free card used by the pharmaceutical companies in the 1986 law in the United States, which absolves them from any liability for harm. Luckily, these laws are now being looked at, she says, and in many cases are going to court, some of them using the defective product laws. So let me know if you live in the UK, if you are aware of this. I want to share a little bit more with you. Okay, this is really interesting. I took a moment there to just do a little research because apparently in the UK, there was also an act of 1986, just like in the United States, which was intended to protect the pharmaceutical companies from any liability related to their products. Well, in the United States, related to the cocktails that were being introduced into the body and bloodstream of individuals. So isn't that interesting? Back in 1986, that there seemed to be perhaps a worldwide move to protect these companies. It's absolutely despicable. Anyway, I want to continue to read this information from our lovely Healthy American in the UK. And she was referring to the 1986 pharma law that was supposed to protect these pharmaceutical companies, but it is currently being pulled apart in the UK, and many cases are going to court. So that's interesting. I hope that that is going to be happening in the United States. I'm always asking why these prominent individuals, the doctors and those that are running for president who seem to be against these pharmaceutical companies, why are they not calling for the dismantling of the Act of 1986 that actually gives liability to these medical pushers, these medicine pushers, these drug pushers? That's a question that I have that has not been answered yet. Let me go back to the email from our lovely Healthy American in the UK. She says, I have been personally testing rainwater residue for 20 years. She said, I wrote to every prime minister in the country in 2011, explaining we'll just call them cocktails in the sky, and the tested contents. She said, strontium, barium, aluminum are not the only recipe. It changes. She's writing, I have measured mercury. She said, you can buy the testing kits online several times. Also, there was a weird one, which put me in mind of the song Purple Rain. The skies have been a deep pink over the last several years. She said, I had some garden chairs that were covered in plastic, just leaning against the fence in my garden. When I went to move them, one had a puddle residue that had been left by the rain, and it was a vibrant purple. So isn't that interesting? Purple rain. Remember acid rain? Remember the hole in the ozone layer? All of these other ways that they were trying to scare us with the weather and the environment. She goes on to write, I scraped all the purple powder off after photographing it, and I still have it in a small jar. I looked it up, purple residue from rain, and she says, I think it came with cadmium. And I'm going to tie this into the cadmium spraying that the government admitted to in the UK. She said, I will look it up again, and I will send you a photo of it. The Norfolk chemical was silver iodide, they said. She said, now the plot thickens. I began looking into the spraying because of a condition known then as, friends, I don't know if this is going to be a trigger word on this channel. It starts with an M. It has to do with your skin. You can look it up online and you can see what people's skin looks like when they have this. And she said, remember that? Anybody that was suffering from this skin condition was blaming the skies. In 28, she said, there's a little bit of personal information I'm going to skip over, but she said that she believes that the cocktail for I'll just say pig flu back in the day was a test run for the current cooties. And she said, our God-given bodies are powerful and made to remove poisons in time. She said that after the pig flu that they must have been working on ways to keep the poison in the body long enough. And it seems that the stratospheric aerosol injections, together with the ionospheric radiators, I like the code words that she's using, are causing the milky skies and the never-ending rain. It's happening in the UK, my friends, as well as California, apparently Tennessee, Florida, and states all over our country. She said there are other chemicals involved. I will try to send a photo of the purple rain powder. So I really appreciate that. And the information actually is completely out in the open about what happened in the UK. Much of Britain was exposed to bacteria sprayed in secret trials. And I'm just reading this from an article in The Guardian. It says the Ministry of Defense turned large parts of the country into a giant laboratory to conduct a series of secret germ warfare tests on the public. A government report that was released, and this was back in, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago. So this information has been out in the open. This was released in 2002. That provides a comprehensive official history of Britain's biological weapons trial between 1940 and 1979. Many of these tests involved releasing potentially dangerous chemicals and microorganisms over vast swaths of the population without the public being told. Details of the secret trials have emerged in recent years, and the government has a multi-page report that reveals new information about over 100 covert, how do you like that word, experiments. The report reveals that military personnel were briefed to tell any inquisitive inquirer that the trials were a part of research projects into weather and air pollution. I rest my case, friends. They have been polluting the air for decades, for lifetimes, basically. And here, these tests were carried out by government scientists at Porton Down. I don't know where that is exactly. And they were designed to help the Ministry of Defense assess Britain's vulnerability if the Russians were to have released clouds of deadly germs over the country. So let me get this straight. Because the Defense Ministry in England was worried about the Russians releasing germs over the country, they decided to do it themselves. That is absolutely brilliant, isn't it? And they are admitting to it. So I do predict that, and there is a lot more to this report, and I will leave a link for you in the Substack so you can read it. And it shows that the government was implicated in these widespread cancer outbreaks in the UK due to this cadmium, which is a known contaminant or a known cause of lung cancer. It's very despicable, very disheartening, very distressing, and absolutely tragic. So I predict that what we're seeing in articles coming out in the news now about solar screening and wanting to deflect the solar rays coming to the earth, I believe that these are stories that are going to pave the way for the government to come out and say, oh yeah, we are doing that for the good of all and the common good. And that's exactly what the UK said as well. What say you? I would love to see and hear from those of you that are sending in this residue to be tested, as our friend in the UK has collected the residue. And what about that connection with Prince and Purple Rain? I actually don't know the lyrics. I haven't watched or followed popular music for a long time. But if you would like to help me connect the clots on that one, let me know in a comment below. I love reading your comments. I love having you on board as Healthy Americans. Stay with me because I have a follow-up video talking about how you can tame the tyrants in your own life. I have 5 techniques that I've used, and I hope that they will be helpful for you. And then, of course, I always want to hear your comments as well. Thanks for being on board, everybody. Big shout out to the moderators, and I look forward to seeing you in the very next video.